Okay, today we're going to learn the halacha if chips have to be bishul Yisroel or not. Potato chips, if they're bishul Yisroel or not. Yeah, I'm not talking about. Okay, we'll talk about all of them. We're going to cover them. I mean, not the chips. Let's focus on potato chips because each one could be a different story. Okay, so first of all, just the background of the halacha of bishul Yisroel. It's Isur Rabbanon. And it says we're reading from the Tur, Shalkus Shabishlam Akum Asurim. If a goy made any cooking, it's also for us to eat. Loshna and Bishlam Ha'akum Beveisoi, or Bishlam Beveis Yisroel. Doesn't make a difference if he did it in his house or by the Jewish home. And I'm going to skip a little bit, and then we're going to go back to it. And he says, V'lo osru ela dover shena nechel k'moshu chai, v'gam oil al shulchan melachim. You need two conditions to have the Isur of Bishul Akum with Rabbanon. You have to be something that you cannot eat it raw, and then also something that's oil al shulchan melachim. It's a fancy food. That the definition shulchan melachim does not mean only what they eat in the White House. The definition shulchan melachim meaning if you, and I think the Aruch HaShulchan is saying what I'm saying now. If you invite somebody, a guest, to your table, you would not be embarrassed to put this on the table. So things that it's not appropriate to put in front of a guest, that's a cheap food, that's called not oil al shulchan melachim. But anything else, if you put Sudas Shabbos, it's we'll go to this every week. If for Sudas Shabbos, Friday night, Shabbos lunch, if you invite somebody and you would put this in front of a guest, it's called oil al shulchan melachim. So anything that you not, if the male doesn't have to be bishul Yisroel. So again, two conditions, you need to be bishul, then you have to be makpid on bishul Yisroel. Something that cannot be eaten raw. For example, if you have a baked apple, it doesn't have to be bishul Yisroel. If a goy baked your apple or cooked your apple, you could eat it because an apple could be eaten raw. And even something that cannot be eaten raw, like potatoes, have to be oil shulchan melachim. Alright, so you could argue, I'm telling you this right now, you could say, so the chips, the potato chips.
Does it matter whether there's a difference between it can be eaten raw or it's appetizing to eat raw? Because you can eat a potato raw.
I know. Again, I knew you were going to say that, and I knew people were going to say this. It's every year when we talk about this. People say this. We're judging things by roiv ha'odom, by most people, not judging by exception. Normal people, 99% of people do not eat potato raw. That's fact. You could argue with this. Not talking about, I could also eat potato raw, but normal people don't eat potato raw. Well, that's how we're judging things. We're not, when I taught the shir about toothpaste and mouthwash, somebody wrote me, he said he has a friend that says chasana shtik, he drinks at the chasanas mouthwash and he eats it, and he eats a tube of toothpaste. So I told him, Adarab, it's raya to me that's not edible because he doesn't eat a chocolate in front of them. He's eating things that's not edible. We're not judging by one person. We're judging by the majority. Anyway, so going back to this. So according to this, right now from what we learn, you could say chips people don't serve to guests. You don't see ever going on a chasana or Friday night meal or Shabbos or any fancy chasa putting chips on the table, potato chips. Remember, you could say it's not oil al shulchan melachim, and that would be the heter. Okay, I'm going to bring another heter. The Aruch HaShulchan writes that potato bichlal, it's not oil al shulchan melachim. So you could say, we're going to talk about that more in a minute. So according to him, even not potato chips, even potato, they sell, OU sell, I think GFS, I think sells potato salad, OU, which is not bishul Yisroel, and maybe that's the heter they use, maybe. One of that, and they have other heterim too. I'm not here to advocate for OU, bichlal not. So they hold, according to Aruch HaShulchan, probably, it's not oil shulchan melachim. However, there's one thing I want to just already say it now. The Indian of Ula Shulchan Melachim, you cannot find a Shach and Taz. He says it's not Ula Shulchan Melachim. It could change with the time. If right now, potato, by the way, this could be served in fancy tables, every Shabbos we eat cholent with potatoes. This oila shulchan malachim. Your guest comes, you go and I'm embarrassed. I'm giving you potatoes from my cholent. You're not embarrassed. It's a kosher food now, so that could change. The oila shulchan could change with the time to time. If it's time they treated potato like a poor food, like he writes over there. It was for poor people. It was potatoes. Then it's not oila shulchan malachim. Now it's people do use potato as the oila shulchan malachim. And it would be osur mitzad. So that's not a heter. It would be.
The fact that it's mixed in doesn't make a difference. Meaning that's mixed in.
That's another halacha. If you have something that doesn't have to be bishul, whether it could be eaten raw or it's not, and mixed with the other stuff, so you judge what's the majority of it. It's a good point you bring. I didn't want to talk about today. Yeah. So you have some cans that they sell over there, vegetable salad, and some of those things like tomato, which would be okay, but then most of it is some vegetable that cannot be eaten raw. Then it's have to be bishul isot. So then you judge by what most of it. You could be on the ingredients, but then on the first. Okay, that's a side point. Now going back to this. So one heter, as I said, would be the heter of the Aruch HaShulchan. That would be for his time. Today, like I said, that's not a good heter today because the potato is oila shulchan malachim. The other heter, you could say the chips itself, it's not oila al shulchan.
Unless you had a shalom zachar. There are some things.
Okay, and normally I'm saying is maybe Shalom Zog has no right. People know over there you bring lechatchila food that's not a meal. It's just something whatever you put on the table over there. But I'll tell you another right. A beer is not known to be a choshuv drink. A beer. And by Shalom Zocher they put it on a fancy kiddush. You're not going to see beer. You're going to see a whiskey. You're going to see a vodka. But over here, it's not. Shalom Zocher is no raya for it. It's not a real meal. Anyway, so however, there is many tzdodim to aser the potato chips. One is what the Ramban writes. The most poskim paskan lahalocha, you have to have two conditions to make it osur mishat bishul akum. Like I said, they have to be oil al shulchan malachim, and it cannot be eaten raw. The Ramban writes, the Loka Ramban, that the Beisayosef says, the posak lishna de surah lechud, the lishna the surah of the Gemara over there, it's only as a do, could be eaten raw or not. Ramban ignores the opinion of oil al shulchan malachim. So according to the Ramban, if potato cannot be eaten raw, it would be osur. Okay, you could say it's only the Ramban, and we don't paskin like him. There's another Rabbeinu Yerucham, the Beisayosef brings in Beda Gabais, say like this: Rabbeinu Yerucham turmus and bom bishum bishule akum lefi she'ena oilem al shulchan malachim labed b'sapas, and he says v'yesh osrim kevan she'en onu b'nei Torah. There is an opinion, again, we don't pass like this either, but I'm just giving you a few pieces of different Rishonim. Some saying turmus, that's something that's not oila shulchan malachim. It definitely cannot be eaten raw. The Gemara says you have to cook it 7 times to make it edible. So there is yesh osrin, because since we're not b'nei Torah, it's such a svara, it's brought in Maseches Be'er, Lagabe bearing and Yom Tov Sheni, that you're allowed to do through Goyim, Kechol Shavua Rabbanon, Yom Tov Sheni. Over here we're saying we still don't do it today. Today you're never going to see at the funeral home working on Yom Tov Sheni, even though it's Kechol Shavua Rabbanon, Lagabe Meis, because we're not b'nei Torah, people could become mezalzel in Yom Tov Sheni. Something over here, there's an opinion of it, we're not b'nei Torah, we could be mezalzel in bishul akum, remember with asering anything that cannot be eaten raw. Again, we don't pass like this la halacha. There is such an opinion. The Ramban, the Rabbeinu Yerucham, one opinion it brings. Then there is another halacha, and that's very strong raya. This halacha, the Shach brings. He said like this: Kosov Yisroel heter krovayim v'kurkavan v'nei me'ayim. There's certain parts of the animal. It's not a fancy meat. Avagav damrina le'il. He brings in the reish siman ayin hey. Ochlein lav bar hineshu v'lav chasicha aruel is chabed. Somebody eating some parts of this meat of the animal is lav bar inish. It's not for human consumption. It's eating Michael Behema. Lav bar inishu. It's subhuman eating such a food. Normal people don't eat that piece of meat. However, if somebody wants to eat it, mikol mokem asurim mishum bishulei akum umvir dar chemoisha. The Ramo brings it over there. It's osur if you eat that cheap meat that normal people don't eat it. I'm not sure how they call them in English, but that's what it says over here. Kurkavan b'nei me'ayim. any meat that people don't normally consume, it's still also mishum il. It's not olal shulchan malachim. You will not put this on a chasana, on a Friday night meal, on a Shabbos lunch meal, because it's not ma'achal choshuv. It's also, and why? I always want to say a svara mishum lo plug, but I was afraid to say it on my own. I find today the Aruch HaShulchan said this svara. He says, since the meat product cannot be eaten raw, and most of them are oil al shulchan malachim, mimele some of the parts of the behema that it's cheap, people, it's lav bar inish, well, whoever eats them, it still have to be mishum lo plug. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan is saying. He says, not your bosor kochush. So you say, he says this meat is shvacha ma'aser. No, we're not going to go there. The end of the chashuv is a lavada the whole min bosor osur, and he quotes that shach. So I was happy that I find Tana the Messiah. So according to this, you're right. The potato chips, it's a cheap food. It's not oil. Even you're going to say it's a cheap food. By the way, the Shevet HaLevi, Rav Osner, he brings the Aruch HaShulchan, disagrees with him, and he says that should be also. He says don't rebuke others in a very strong language. He says, but it's better to answer it because he holds. He doesn't bring this svara. By the way, he does not bring this svara. He holds that he says even choshev people once in a while you could see them eating chips. You could chop them eating chips. So he says it's a choshev Michael. He says okay. That's how he says. Akoponim. He holds us also the Shevet HaLevi chips should be osur, but again, according to this svara, since the potatoes is oil shulchan malachim today for sure. I mean, Aruch HaShulchan will also be moida today. The potato is not just like his time was ma'achal aniyim. You could see in Chassan that's making a lot of food from potato. Even though this part of the potato, the chips, it's not oil shulchan malachim. It's a mishum lo plug. That would be osur. That's a very strong raya. I say what the Shach says, or the Darchei Moshe says. It's a strong raya why the potato chips should be osur mishum bishul akum. There's one more argument I might have, and I want to bring it. And the Shevet HaLevi also he addresses this. Some hold if it's done in a factory, there is such an opinion. It's not shaykh over there bishul akum, because one of the reasons of bishul akum is that the Rashi brings mishum chasanus. You go with him to a party, you're going to make you a good warm food, you're going to become friends. One day you make a shidduch between the kids. We don't want that, we don't want some chasanas. By factory, it's not shaykh. The owner of that big chips company is not going to make a shidduch with me or with you. So it's not shaykh. So Mele, he says there's a lot. But he says the Chazon Ish doicha this svara, and other Rabbi have another strong svara to doicha this opinion. Why? Because in the beginning, I skipped this today, but I'm going to read it again. In the beginning of this Kuf Yud Gimel in Yeredeh, that's what talks about Bishul Akum, the Tur brings the opinion of Rabbeinu Avram. Rabbeinu Avram, the Svara, your matir in Bishlam Akum, the Veisa Shel Yisroel. If you have a worker at home working for you, full-time, part-time, it's not a company of a friend. You're working there by the hour. So he says, but if he cooks for your food, it's not shaykh bishul akum. Because the two reasons, the lo shaykh bu lo mishum chasanus, that's the reason Rashi brings. V'lo mishum shema yachel dvarim atmeim. That's the opinion of his anikel, the Rashbam. Rashbam says the bishul akum is also mishum. Maybe he's going to feed you treifas. In your house, you buy the products. You watch him, and by cooking, he's not become your friend. You're not going to get shidduch with him. V'meili says it's not. And by Lamaisa, the Tur Paskin, and that's all the Poskin Paskin, v'Rabbeinu Tam choylek olav v'chen no yagim. Most Paskin against Rabbeinu Avram. Paskin Rabbeinu Tam, mishum loy plug. You're right. It's not shaykh of here. The isurim bishul akam chasnus dvarim asurim lo plug bishul akam osur. It's osur. According to this, in a factory, you could argue there's not shaykh. All this inyonim mitzad dvorim asurim, you could say maybe hashgocha, we know the ingredients, mitzad chasnus not shy, but loy plug mimeila. So the chips, there's really more tzdodim to aseret. That's what that's in a commercial setting, lo plug, and that is a cheap lo plug because the potato could be eaten oil shulchan malachim, not the chips. So lo plug, that's the shach and the Darchei Moshe brought this raya. And that what the Shevet HaLevi holds, he holds it. It's not lav dafka; it's a cheap food. He says it's possible. Then that's what you swore the eating it by Shalom Zohar. He's saying, or he says sometimes even sorim nechbodim could eat chips. It's not such a. You could argue on this, but I'm saying we put all this together. It's more svara to aser it. However, he said if he sees somebody make it, he says don't rebuke them in a strong language. Yesh lam also al mashi yismoichu. Okay, shkoyach.